Seeing that it's now past 9 o'clock and we do have a quorum, we'll call to order the October 28th, 2025 meeting of the Zionsville Redevelopment Commission. We'll start, as usual, with the consent agenda items of the monthly report, TIF report, approval and adoption of the meeting minutes from September 23rd, approval and adoption of the executive session minutes also from September 23rd, and then the claims for approval. Any questions or comments on the consent items? All right. Seeing none, is there a motion to approve? Moved. Second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. And now we'll move on to the director's report.
I don't think I have anything additional to discuss today. I think most of it is going to be in the agenda, so I think we can jump right into the agenda if that works for you,
Right.
Mr. President.
So we'll go through director's report, old business on the new business. And it looks like the first thing is a term sheet for 420 South Main Street. Deputy Mayor, will you speak on that? Is there someone here that will?
Yeah, I can lay out just the high level, and then we can
Okay.
have some representation here from the developer to talk about it. I think this is exciting, and we'll be talking about it a little bit further in the agenda as well, but this would be for development of 420 West Main Street, which is often known as the Sitco lot, right between Sycamore and, along Sycamore between First and Main. So this would be a two-story building that I really think will mirror the character and scale of the village and give us a nice front door to our village, and then allow us also to have some development on a lot that really has sat vacant for quite a while. So I think with that, I'll hand it over to the team to give a little bit of a high-level overview of the project.
And thank you, Justin. Adam Collins with Wallach, Summers and Haas. And we'll see if I can manage the technology this morning. It's always, a little bit of a challenge, but. And I've got information on a couple of different projects we talked about, but we'll just go ahead and skip to what we're going to refer to, I think, is the Sitco lot for the purposes of maybe familiarity as much as anything. As Justin said, this is a site that I think has had a long history of potential opportunities for development, but Mark Jaffe Realty, who's here with us today, has taken on the site and the challenge to development. I think really continue to work with the city as a partner as we've gone through, several different challenges as it relates to that site in terms of what the new road relocation looks like and all those different things. So it's been a really great partnership to date, but this just gives you an overview of what the building footprint looks like, parking, how it orients on the site. In terms of the rendering, again, this is where I'm terrible, but Chris Lake with Delve can add more detail if you want, but really trying to capture, a similar feel to what exists in the downtown Zionsville area as well, the village, and looking at that in the same respect with this building, with the materials, the glass, all of those different elements that really engage the street level participation. I think you can see on the front right there, one of the things that has been a key feature of this building from the very beginning is like a fine dining restaurant space that would go in on that first level. There's an outdoor space that goes along with that as well. And I would say that Mark has had significant early interest from tenants who have done similar high-end kind of restaurant locations in Hamilton County suburbs look at this space as well. So a lot of really, really strong interest, not just in desire to come in, but also what the tenants are willing to pay and per square foot rents, which I think is, kind of a critical piece, not only to make the project work, but also good news for the town as well as those numbers continue to push further and further north. In terms of the project rendering, just giving you a little bit idea of what goes on the two-story building. So tenant space, it's most likely to be probably some sort of office space, I think is what's contemplated currently, as well as that large restaurant space on the first floor and the outdoor patio. Second floor is really maybe a little bit less exciting, but those larger tenant spaces and then the roof deck, which is a little bit of a different amenity and something we're starting to see, I think, more and more just throughout the region. But I think it's something to be really exciting given the location here. So a mixed-use building, true mixed-use combination of office and commercial users and retail and/or restaurant use on that first floor, and a pretty sizable one as well. I'm going to apologize. The square footage on this is wrong. If you look, you'll say it's really closer to probably 25,000 square feet, including that outdoor patio space. Estimated total project investment this time about $12 million. Again, Mark and his team are still continuing to go through and determine exactly what that is. Just so you know, the team includes Mark, who's got significant development and brokerage experience, but also Delve handling the design, and I think sounds like Garmon Construction is going to more likely than not be the construction partner. So partners with really significant expertise in the ability to deliver a project of this type. Estimated annual new property taxes paid, again, a little bit of a swag here based on our end. As we get a little bit further into the details, we'll be able to nail those numbers down a little bit more significantly. But again, taking a site that historically has not paid a lot in property taxes and bringing it back on the tax roll, which we think is super important. And then the office, proposed tenant mix, office and fine dining. So it's a development, one that we think fits within the character, one that Mark has worked, I think, really hard to deliver and is committed to, not only in terms of making the project happen, but also being a long-term, owner of this site in Zionsville. So I think this is something that for the development team and for Mark specifically is really a legacy item. And so that's where you're seeing some of the investment that's being made in the quality of the building, the types of uses, and all of those different things. So with that, happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions?
I have a question for Justin, if I could, please. So this
Sir.
Yeah, this project is part of an overall redevelopment of the roads and the purchase of part of the land for that purpose, correct?
That's correct.
And that particular element of this is at what stage in that process, as far as redeveloping the roads and stuff?
Great question. So the larger project, which includes both the intersection at Sycamore and Main, between First and Main on Sycamore, and then also some improvements along Sycamore as you come into the village there from Lions Park, and then addressing Oak and First as well. That will be actually considered and discussed at Monday, November 3rd's Town Council meeting for approval and funding from the Town Council's portion of the funding for that project.
So if the RDC approves this, which I'm for, the purchase of the land may or may not happen depending on that particular element, correct?
Yes, so there's going to be, when you say the purchase of the land, there's various small segments of property that will be acquired by the town for the purposes of right-of-way. There are, specific to this parcel, there will be right-of-way acquisitions, and those right-of-way acquisitions and the cost thereof will be rolled into an incentive for this project.
And we need the land for the development of the roads.
The roads and sidewalks and streetscape, yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. The reason I ask is there's concern on Main Street about exactly what we're doing here, and so I'm trying to alleviate some of those concerns. I think the project is long overdue. I personally, as a business owner downtown, am very much for the redevelopment of the roads. I think that those are long overdue of doing something for the downtown situation. I think that's all I have. The timeline over the project, the overall project, would, if the town council approves everything next month, then we move forward in what kind of time frame?
So in 2026 is really when we would start to move forward. There'd be acquisition of property for the right-of-way that could start now. That can be a drawn-out process depending on how the engagement is with landowners. And then the next phase after that's going to be utility relocation, which to some degree we're at the mercy of the utility companies, particularly Duke Energy, as it relates to moving electric lines. And then I think we would figure out ways in which we can coordinate our portion of the project with that utility relocation in 26. And then as much as we can possibly do in 26, and that would probably move into completion in 27.
Okay. Thank you.
And I could speak just briefly because you raised it. I think that this is an important project that brings both an opportunity to improve the traffic situation in the village, but also bring this parcel and activate it and bring some important development to this parcel, all while making sure that we maintain sidewalks and streetscapes and sort of an experience of coming into the village from multiple directions. Like I said, coming along Sycamore, coming along Oak, and really being able to have development by way of this project that it matches the character and the scale, I think, of the village.
I would also like to, for my wife and I, Liz, at Cobblestone, we have always been a proponent of that area being developed. I think it's long overdue, and I hope that we can move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions or comments, thoughts?
I would just echo those sentiments. I live about 100 yards from this redevelopment, and it would be a phenomenal reuse. I think that's very consistent with the village, so very supportive.
One thing, and Deputy Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, but this could have been a lot larger of a project, and the developer scaled it back so that it fit better within the village, which created some inefficiencies, but he was willing to do that. Is that a fair statement?
That's correct. I think that from the perspective of the town, the motivation for incentivizing and participating and partnering on a project like this is that a project like this and the incentive that we're able to provide allows that project to be of, like as I mentioned, of a scale and of a character that I really think fits in well there. And then there is clearly constraints to this site as it relates to the road improvements that will occur on the northern side, and then you have a power line that goes east-west across the project, and then you have some floodplains. So I think it's been a great partnership working with Mr. Jaffe and his team to be able to bring a development that, again, is of the scale and of the character that fits in this space and has some constraints to it.
Any other questions? With that, do I have a motion to approve the LOI for the Sitco lot?
So moved.
We should, so not to
Oh,
interrupt,
nope.
but we should approve the substantially complete format, just in case there are some minor revisions that need to be made to the text, and we should probably assign a signatory for this as well.
Yeah, just to follow up on what Zach was, I think we've got 99% agreement as it relates to the final terms, and I think we're just cleaning those up. So I think as Zach alluded to, all of the substance of the term sheet that in front of you, I think will be identical to what will be signed. But I think at this point in time, just making sure that we have the ability to wrap up those, dot those I's and cross those T's, and then maybe assign President Kittner to have authority to sign that once we've done that here in the coming days.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the LOI in substantially final form?
So moved.
Second. We vote on this part, then assign the signatory?
I think we probably do it in,
You can amend the motion to add the signatory,
Right.
just so you can do it as one.
We'll amend the motion to have a signatory of our president.
Having a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. All right, moving on, Creekside Corporate Park Lot 3, also Jaffe Realty Company. Deputy Mayor, we've seen this before in the form of the LOI and had a
Yes.
presentation. Anything else today on this that you want to discuss or
yeah,
present
just
on?
thinking, this is Lot 3 in Creekside Corporate Park, the same development team, as a matter of fact, so glad to see Mr. Jaffe and the team investing in Zionsville. Happy to give a quick presentation if the commissioners would like it as to relates to the project. Two-story multi-tenant building, most likely, that will occur and be built, like I said, sort of on the right-hand side of Creekway as you head back towards the cul-de-sac there. So again, happy to give a quick presentation, but also don't need to if we want to be efficient with time.
We need a refresher on the project, or? I think we're good.
Okay. I think same thing. We are 99% of the way there. So I think that's the same approach as it relates to a motion to approve it in its substantially complete form and assign the president to sign it here in the coming days.
Not to get off topic, but can we start adding that in these documents? I'm used to seeing that as a provision that when they get approved, there's a reference at the end that these are substantially final form.
Yes, we can do that for sure.
I'll move that we approve the development agreement for Lot 3 and Creekside with the provision of a signature by our president.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. All right, thank you. Next, we have hotel study findings.
Yes, so excited to present on the findings today. If you recall back in, I believe in maybe the July timeframe, this commission approved a study with Hunden Partners to do a feasibility study to really understand the drivers of demand, the existing supply, and then what really is the gap that is tried to be filled here in the town of Zionsville as it relates to hotels and meeting space. I think we have some really interesting engagement with Discover Boone County, corporate partners, really understanding what the need is. And then so joining us remotely is going to be Ryan Sheridan from Hunden Partners to talk a little bit about the findings of that study.
Good morning, all. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes. Yes.
Very good. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for the introduction, Justin. Wanted to share with you all a little bit of a progress update on the scope of work related to the hotel feasibility study in Zionsville today. So we have a short executive summary to take you all through, and then happy to answer any questions and have a discussion about next steps and where we're at in the process directly following. So I will. So in all, we have a lot of content included within the market study, but again, we're going to go through a very condensed version today. Throughout the process, we've really been taking into consideration a lot of the economic, demographic, and tourism factors that are currently building and affecting Zionsville. So really interesting stuff as far as actual market data goes, but then expanding that into understanding local hotel market analysis. This is a really interesting time to be studying a potential hotel development in Zionsville. So having to take a look at multiple different competitive sets within the greater Indianapolis area. We really considered there to be a handful of different competitive markets, some more in the immediate area along the 465 and 65 corridors, but then also expanding the look into some of the more upscale developments that have been very successful in northern Indianapolis. So we have a little bit of analysis on two different competitive sets that really ultimately affected some of the recommendations and some of the demand and financial modeling that we're still working on with the internal team. And then also taking a look at opportunities for conference and meeting space. Throughout this process, we've really heard of the lack of supply for adequate meeting spaces that are within the market currently, forcing a lot of lost business outside of the town of Zionsville. So looking to accommodate some of the lost business going on in the market currently. And then we'll get into the recommendations. Again, I wouldn't take you through 53 slides, but in total, got a lot of content backing some of the recommendations and guiding our next steps. So very happy with where we're at in the process currently. And we'll just get into some of the executive summary findings as we continue on. So, throughout this scope of work, we've really asked a lot of key questions that really relate to where the market is now and where we want to head and how we get there. So as we're looking at how the market's performing now, of course, paying attention to what the current supply of hotel and meeting facilities are in Zionsville and around Zionsville, and what are the competitive markets that we really need to benchmark and understand as we're looking to make these recommendations for a new development. And what types of meetings, conferences, and overnight stays are currently being lost from Zionsville, resulting in lost economic impact, and where are those overnight stays and those meetings going? How we're looking at how we're benchmarking ourselves against those competitive markets. So how do you stack up in terms of supply. And really on the demand side, as we've seen Zionsville grow both population-wise as well as from that economic background. So looking at different demand drivers from leisure, corporate, and group demand, and how those would really affect overall segmentation projections within the hotel. Looking at opportunities, of course, we looked within the immediate market, but then also took a look at some competitive case studies from around the country for best practices and some success stories from similar size markets that have been able to capitalize with an upscale and boutique development within their downtown as well. And then really the question of how we get there is really where we're focused on over the next couple weeks and month or two on understanding with these economic impact and demand and financial projections, what are some of these funding mechanisms and incentives that we can really utilize to be able to attract a private developer to partner with us on an engagement for a new hotel in Zionsville. So just talking about some key findings and some stakeholder feedback, we've had the opportunity to speak with a lot of local and regional stakeholders throughout this process. And the feedback has been overwhelming in terms of the need and the demand for a hotel product within Zionsville. Again, echoing just the sheer volume of lost room nights that are occurring, both going over to Whitestown, into Westfield, and into Hamilton County from the lack of product, but the amount of demand that's being driven by some of the new corporate leaders that are in the market, as well as the growing transient market and the growing group market from an event standpoint. So in getting the opportunity to speak with Discover Boone County, and again, a lot of these corporate leaders, as well as the executive airport, to understand the different demand drivers in the market, again, would just reiterate the overwhelming demand, the need for additional hotel product within Zionsville. So we'll talk about, taking a look at opportunities for upscale boutique hotels. And we really see a large opportunity in the downtown area for such a product that's going to be a demand driver for bringing both residents as well as visitors into the downtown to experience some of the amenities that come with an upscale or boutique hotel. We really see a big positive for the project in the downtown area because of the success that downtown Zionsville has had. And the walkability that a product like this would be able to build off of. Of course, we've talked about the appropriate needs for function space. So in getting to talk with a lot of these corporate leaders and Discover Boone County and other stakeholders throughout the process, understanding that there's a lack of event space within the market that can accommodate events up to 300 people. We had the opportunity to talk about a high volume of events that can't be hosted in Zionsville now and are going into Hamilton County and even in some cases, downtown Indianapolis to be able to host some of the events from a banquet and social scene that a product like this would be able to accommodate and drive significant revenue, both to the hotel, but also keep that economic impact within the town of Zionsville. And then, of course, paying attention to the needs for unique design, a long list of amenities that come along with these products, and brand affiliation from brands such as a Hilton or a Marriott to be able to effectively market a product like this just outside the region would certainly be critical to the success of the product. And as far as amenities go, looking at the opportunities to develop a full-service restaurant, craft cocktail bars, potentially spas, and rooftop dining and cocktail opportunities. Certainly a trend that we see in these developments across the country that make them successful and help support the bottom line from a performance standpoint. So just quickly getting through a SWOT analysis on the project. We've already talked through these, so I'll hit them pretty quickly. But again, one of the main strengths of the project is the rapid population rise and economic growth that are fueling different demand drivers for transient and corporate and even group hospitality demand. A limited hospitality supply within the vibrant downtown currently. I had the opportunity to speak with the owners of the B&B that's currently downtown, and certainly happy to hear that their business is doing well. But even them kind of acknowledging the lack of different accommodations downtown and being able to build that supply downtown, certainly seen as an opportunity here from them. And then alignment with economic development goals and master planning efforts, as Justin alluded to before we started the presentation, knowing that this is something that the town has been looking at potentially expressing interest in for a long time now. So glad to see that there's alignment both from a leadership standpoint as well as what the market is really telling us. From a weaknesses standpoint, just looking at the lack of products now and trying to address that with looking at different competitive markets in the region. Also, site control. This is something that we've been working with the team, Justin and Zach, really paying attention to some opportunities with the lack of site control downtown and how we address that. So that's certainly a focus in the coming weeks for us. And then potentially in the downtown area, if a site is chosen, looking at potentially needing structured parking, which can be costly to the project. But again, looking to address that with some of the public tools that we have in the toolbox in Zionsville. Opportunities, driving that upscale hospitality offering to drive additional visitation and economic impact downtown, hoping to help the existing businesses benefit from that walkability. And then becoming an event and meetings destination within Zionsville and Boone County to be able to attract some of those high impact events. And then some of the threats, we've talked about these throughout the process as well, just needing to pay attention to some of the restrictions that have been risen in the past in looking to execute projects downtown, a competitive northern Indianapolis meetings market, and then of course, increasing construction costs for some of these more upscale properties. But again, we've touched on a handful of these topics already, but just want to reiterate the overwhelming growth that Zionsville has seen, roughly 38% since 2010 to now, with expectations for another 20% growth over the next 5 years. Really paying attention to some of these large-scale, impactful projects that are also going on in Zionsville and around Zionsville, especially with some of the progress that Eli Lilly has been able to make on the LEAP Innovation District, and understanding what that does and really what that's doing to hotel room night demand in the market currently. And over the next 5 years, certainly a very important project to pay attention to. Again, downtown location and accessibility, a highly accessible drive-in downtown from I-65 and 465, and looking at some of the daily traffic counts and the accessibility from the highway there is a huge benefit to the project. And then from all aspects, when looking at segmentation from a leisure, from a group, and from a corporate standpoint, overwhelming demand from each of those segments. So within the financial models, trying to assign specific recommendations and projections for what that segmentation would look like. It's not typical to see overwhelming demand from each of those segments, but in this case, we've been able to have a lot of interviews with these stakeholders that have expressed the need in all different kinds of that business that the hotel would look to attract. So from a recommendation standpoint, we're just going to go through some quick market data and some of the analysis that went into that, and I'll have a similar slide at the end that we can end on for discussion. But as we carry into some of the demand and financial projections, we're looking at modeling out 3 different scenarios to be able to see what that does to the bottom line from a performance standpoint, and then in the next steps throughout this process, how that would change the economic impact projections for the project and some of the benefits to the public sector from a net new fiscal standpoint. But taking a look at the first scenario, recommending about 80 rooms in total, with it accompanied by 7,000 square feet of function space. That's going to include 4,000 square feet of ballroom space and 3,000 square feet of meeting space in addition to that. So of course, needing breakout meeting rooms to accompany that ballroom space, very important for operations, for meetings and events. And then looking at 2 different scenarios as we scale up both the room count and the total function space. So again, we'll circle back to this at the end, and just kind of wanted to walk through a little bit more of the analysis when I really explained before the 2 different competitive sets. So typically, it's very important to pay attention to what's going on in the immediate area to understand that key segmentation demand driver. So initially, we were looking at competitive products, again, along the 65 corridor and into 465, really trying to see what's being driven from corporate group and leisure. But really, as we advance throughout the process, understanding that Zionsville currently is getting a lot of demand also from accompanying markets, such as Westfield and Carmel over along 31, and even some of the markets that are closer to downtown Indianapolis. So we developed a second competitive set, more of those upscale and boutique properties and some of the more select service properties along 31. But other products in the market that we looked at included the Carmichael, the new Nickel Plate Hotel in Fishers, even the Ironworks Hotel on the northern side of Indianapolis, and the Bottle Works Hotel as well, to understand the performance of some of those more upscale and boutique hotels both from an occupancy as well as from an average daily rate perspective. So again, as we were going through this analysis, trying to understand how occupancy and rate have fluctuated over the past 6 years and coming out of COVID. Overall, occupancy has nearly recovered to pre-pandemic levels, while rate is being driven well past pre-pandemic levels. So the strength of the market in terms of occupancy and rate very strong, both in that immediate 5-mile radius, as well as in the other competitive set as we expand that view out to 31 and some of the more compelling upscale and boutique properties in the northern Indianapolis market. So one of the last things just wanted to point out from the market data perspective, as we're looking at that competitive set in the immediate area, very strong performance on the weekends, indicating a strong leisure market. A lot of that really being driven in some instances, especially during the summer months, from Grand Park. We've been studying the effects of Grand Park on the surrounding markets over the past couple of years, and knowing that it's a major demand driver in the summer. That's why you're starting to see some of those occupancies in the midweek in the summertime and the high occupancies on the weekend throughout the spring, summer, and fall months be very strong. But where we really see a strong opportunity is the midweek occupancy levels. That's where we really turn our sights to being able to attract some of that group demand from conferences and trade shows and conventions that would be able to be hosted within the function space. So seeing opportunities from our conversations with Discover Boone County and with some of the corporate leaders within the community to be able to host those events during the midweek time periods to help drive occupancy and rate. Again, a lot of strong indicators looking at being able to fill those opportunity gaps from an additional product in downtown Zionsville. And then, as I alluded to as well, there were a lot of different aspects that we looked at, some similar case studies from across the country, but we turned our sights to similar markets in terms of population growth as well as total market size. So we were looking in places like Burlington, Vermont, Saratoga Springs, and upstate New York, and Charlottesville, Virginia, to understand some of the best practices from some of their compelling boutique hotel properties. Again, these were ranging in size from a total of 65 keys up to 125, looking at some of the function space they had there and interviewing some of the management companies to understand if they were able to do it over again, what would they do differently? And most frequently that came up in those interviews was talking about the need for more function space. So really justifying the need to be able to incorporate larger ballroom and larger meeting space within these developments is why we were kind of looking at those throughout the recommendations there. So with that, I'm going to pause again, end on the recommendation slide that's really guiding some of the demand and financial and the economic impact projections that we're currently doing with the team internally. Happy to answer any questions and take any comments that you all have at this time with where we're at in the process. But thank you for the time and really appreciate the opportunity.
Great, thank you. That was very thorough and I think hopefully helpful to all of us. It was good to hear. I have one question. I'll open up the commission. On this recommendations page, would retail or restaurant, would that factor into any of these function space options, or would that be separate, or are you not recommending it for the hotel?
No, that's a very good question. We can certainly incorporate the recommendation for some of those other amenities that I mentioned as we were going through some of the headlines. So just again, we would like to see a full service restaurant be developed within this product. Some of the other things that we've talked about include some of those rooftop dining and cocktail spaces as well as a spa. So
but that's not
within our
contemplated in these numbers, I guess was my question, so.
In these numbers, no, I apologize.
It's fair.
But within
No,
our
it's fair.
financial models, we do have the revenue streams included.
Yeah.
So I can be sure to clarify that those are included in the recommendations.
No need.
As well.
I assumed that was the case. I just wanted to double check, so.
Yes.
Any questions from commissioners?
I know we looked at existing inventory, but do we know if any of our surrounding communities, Whitestown, Lebanon, are engaged in a similar effort for more hotels?
At this time, related to competitive product focused on this boutique and upscale properties, No, we do have a slide within our presentation that talks about the development pipeline where there are some more limited and select service. So properties that you would think of might be like a Hampton Inn or a Fairfield Inn by Marriott, but nothing competitive to the scale and of what we're talking about within this project.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Deputy Mayor, so we have this great study done now. What do we do with it? What's the next steps with it?
I think that's a great question. I think our objective, our goal was to really help be a facilitator in terms of understanding what, the how, the why. I think the where obviously is probably, if there is consensus and if there is a desire on behalf of the market to see a hotel be here in Zionsville, I think this was to try to spur that a little bit. I think everyone knew innately that there was a need for hotel and meeting space in Zionsville, but this gives us a third-party objective, best-in-class consultant that can give us some of this information. So I think really now it's understanding we do not have site control. I think that was mentioned briefly. If this in different scenarios, and in speaking with Hunden, there's a lot of other municipalities that own land or perhaps have the appetite to purchase land to do it and are really driving the construction and the development process. I think in the town of Zionsville, our inclination in this situation is going to really be a partner, be a facilitator, and work alongside a development partner. So I think really that's going to be the question is working with some landowners and discussing opportunities, but really having them drive that conversation and figure out how the town can participate. So there is an opportunity. Actually, you might have seen it in the 2026 RDC budget that if such an opportunity presents itself and really seems to have a little bit of legs, that Hunden Partners can come alongside the town and the RDC and think about how best the town could be a partner, a public-private partner, an investor in a project, and what that would look like and what the economics of that might be in terms of tax generation and return on investment for the town in terms of what is a smart and properly sized investment that the town might make in a hotel.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, what's that?
That was my question. No? So does Hunden get to a point where they make recommendations on brand standards or brands and, that's not a part of this?
Probably tough since we don't own the land.
Yeah,
They could maybe confirm or review a property owner / developer's intent, or maybe even help them, but I think it's hard for them to, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my sense is it'd be hard for them to provide much value there, since it's not a site that we have land and we're going out to try to figure out what to do.
I'll take a run at it, and I don't know if you want to supplement or correct me, Ryan, but I think the recommendations in the existing study was that, really a boutique brand, ideally with a larger flag, such that you can have access to the, those individuals that are diehard Marriott. They're going to look on their Bonvoy app and they're going to look for something. And if you're not, part of a larger brand, you're not going to get access to those types of travelers. But a smaller version of that, and those autograph collection. There's some hotels you probably stayed in, you don't even necessarily realize they're Marriotts or they're Hyatts. They have a name, they have a style, they have decoration, they have a field that is local and that is sort of boutique and small in nature. I think that's sort of the extent of the recommendation at this time, but happy to have any other thoughts you might have, Ryan.
No, I think the point that was made about just at this point not having the site control and not necessarily guiding the process, that does affect that. But we certainly can make recommendations, and we've been talking with Justin and Zach about what our role is in this next process. More than capable of making those recommendations about what we would like to see and the types of products within those brand families that we would recommend. So at this point, just working with them to identify what is most appropriate for us to help on, and we're happy to help in any way to really address any questions that you all have as next steps do develop in this process related to that.
I think, again, this study indicates some of the parameters that are a good fit based on sort of demand drivers in the area. and then between landowners, developers, capital partners, they sort of bring the product that they think meets the need, and then we can analyze and again work alongside Hunden as to what that gap might be between the cost of construction, the cost of operation, the revenues, and what, again, I think somewhat similar to our discussion related to the Sitco lot, if there is a gap that exists that we want to help fill, to help bring a project to life that really matches what we want to have in this town and also matches the return on investment that we could seek as a town, then that's something Hunden can help us with if a project starts to crystallize a little more.
Yes.
All right. Thanks again. Moving on, we have, what is it? Redevelopment Commission 2026 budget introduction.
Yeah, we wanted to just do a high-level overview of the budget today as it relates to the 2026 budget, approve that budget at the November 18th meeting. A couple of items I just wanted to highlight that are perhaps not in every year's budget, somewhat out of the ordinary, is the incentive related to the Sitco lot. So that is in that budget that is coming out of the downtown TIF. In addition, there is the contribution to the road improvements, the pedestrian improvements, and really that infrastructure, that connectivity infrastructure that we described earlier that I think is part and parcel and helps bring this project at the Sitco lot to life and vice versa. So those are actually, they're in the amount of $2.5 million each, both the incentive and the contribution to the project. I can give some more. Again, this will be discussed at length at the town council meeting last week, so I can answer any questions as it relates to that. And then the other two things I wanted to highlight were over in the Creekside TIF. We've already discussed this, and we have a development agreement with the developer and the landowner for Lot 9, Intelligent Living Solutions. That lot is along 106th Street, does not have other access points. So this commission made the decision to help provide a approximately $100,000 investment in coordination with resurfacing of 106th Street to allow them an entryway. Thanks, I've talked enough.
John, does that mic up there work that you have?
So if you want to just come use this one, you can. I can scoot over. There you go.
There it goes. No?
There we go. So again, in Creekside Corporate Park, $100,000 are and then additionally, another $100,000 for signage, as we've started to get more tenants and want to make sure that all of those tenants have sufficient signage to their businesses. We always want to have kind of a joint signage rather than having, a billboard type approach. Of course, no one wants that. So this just gives an opportunity to think about some additional signage at the entrance at Creekway and 106th for businesses in Creekside.
Any other questions on the budget? And we will discuss this further.
We can discuss it
next
further,
meeting.
and also we reviewed it at length with our finance committee, so I don't know if Katie or Kent have any comments or.
I think that's fair. Planning document, happy to take any questions or recommendations back to our next committee meeting too for a final look in November. But kudos to Zach, he worked really hard on this, and it's separated by allocation area and economic development area, and it's really well done, so good job, Zach.
I agree, and I think that the other thing I would add too is that, those investments that I described both in the downtown business district and in Creekside Corporate Park, I think are a good example of ways that we can use tax increment to improve infrastructure as it relates to these areas that I think benefits the businesses that are there who generated those taxes in the first place, so.
Great.
Should have some more certainty around assessed values and those things too, and some of those assumptions from Crow. So if anything like that changes before November, we can bring it up too.
Yes, and generally those, just because of the timing of tax assessments and collections, generally those projections as it relates to revenue on those TIFs is really built off of 2025 numbers. So those are always going to be very conservative numbers as it relates to revenue from those TIFs.
Further questions? Okay. We're not approving anything, it's just introduction.
Really
of the
just a
budget,
discussion,
right?
introduction. Yep.
Next is the 2026 scheduled meetings. Pretty self-explanatory. Is this an approval or an introduction?
John, I think it's best to
Do
have
we
an
need to
approval,
approve
right?
it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you could vote to approve it.
Okay.
And it's pretty straightforward. It's really just November and December
Yeah.
due to holidays.
Any questions on the meeting schedule for 2026? Was there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, motion carries. Other business, we already heard a little bit from the Finance Committee. Anything else?
No, I think we,
Claims?
Yeah.
yeah, just normal stuff.
Yep. Governance Committee, nothing to report at this time. Zionsville CDC,
The CDC did not convene,
okay,
so no report.
no report. With that, we're at the end of the agenda. Any other items before we adjourn? All right, is there a motion?
So moved to adjourn.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.